Hi guys, so welcome back to my channel. My name is Paula and I wanted to sort of do a little intro video, kind of introducing myself and my bookish journey. This is actually particularly appropriate to do today because it is January 4th, even though it is almost January 5th, as I'm doing this at 11 p.m. But either way, it still counts. January 4th is Louis Braille's birthday, which makes it National World Braille Day. So happy World Braille Day, everybody. This day is particularly important to me and other blind people like me because that is how we read, being visually impaired people. You've probably seen some Braille somewhere, either maybe in pictures or in, your elevators or bathroom doors. Generally, you have the signs. But anyway, on to my personal bookish journey. As I said before, I'm totally blind, and I was also born with osteoporosis, which basically means that I could break something if I fell, which doesn't really combine well with blindness because blind people tend to trip and bump into things, and it's not great when you are also breakable. That is why I spent the majority of my time reading, because I couldn't do a lot of physical things. So, yeah, I've been reading since I was very small. I actually started learning Braille, I think, at the age of 2 or 3, but I don't think I really started reading independently until I was like 8. But before that, my mom read to me a lot. The funny thing is that she never really read picture books to me. And it wasn't just because I'm blind and I couldn't really appreciate the pictures. She just read novels to me from probably the age of 3 on. And I had a pretty long attention span and I wanted to be read to, so it worked. We read probably half of Roald Dahl's collection, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, and we also read the Narnia books, all of them. I think except for The Last Battle, that was the only one we never got to. We read some Beverly Cleary, although I read those on my own later too. Boxcar Children, American Girls. We read Harry Potter when I was a bit older. We read the first 3 books in Spanish, but I'd already read them myself in English before, but I was kind of young when I did, so it was sort of good to read them with someone. But then she kind of got bored by book 4 and just kind of didn't want to keep going because she sort of got stuck on chapter 1, which is the Riddle House, which has nothing to do with Harry specifically, or at least that's what you think when you first read the book, so she wasn't very interested in reading the book from there. So, yeah, she kind of stopped reading the books and just saw the movies, which, in my personal opinion, is a sin, but hey, whatever floats your boat. Anyway, this decision to read her toddler full-length novels resulted in her having a difficult time reading picture books once she became employed as a nanny. She would come home complaining about how much she hated Dr. Seuss and all the rhyming books and stuff like that. She just could not understand how little kids could sit through something so boring, as she put it. She needed a plot. And I guess she was just used to my excitement at needing to read one more chapter, instead of having a kid who you read 3 pages and then the kid's done reading. So, yeah, I always just told her, hey, it's not this kid's fault that you raised a genius and read Shakespeare to toddlers. Okay, she didn't read Shakespeare, but, you get the idea. Anyway, probably the most influential person when it comes to my reading after my mom was my Braille teacher, Miss Schindler. I started with her when I was in 3rd grade, and that's when I kind of started reading by myself a bit more. She had a really good collection of books in her library in the classroom. So I started reading a lot of Magic Treehouse, Junie B. Jones, which wildly controversial. Some Little House books, Little House on the Prairie. I love the Little House books. Lois Lowry, Beverly Cleary for sure. I like the Ramona books, but I was actually more interested in Ralph the Mouse from The Mouse and the Motorcycle. I love those books. But, it's kind of wild that I was more interested in a mouse than I was in a kid. But, hey, it is what it is. She also did read alouds, and the first book I remember her reading aloud to us was Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. That grew my love for Judy Blume. A lot. One of my first memories of that book was chapter 3, where Fudge refuses to eat and Fudge's dad decides to dump a bowl of cereal on his head and says, eat it or wear it. And I remember laughing hysterically, but it wasn't just because it was a silly thing to do. It was because I was experiencing something similar in my own life. I was kind of a picky eater as a kid, a really picky eater, and I would just refuse to eat if I didn't like something. I could probably go on some hunger strikes, and I did not like anything that resembled vegetables. So, yeah, the day before Miss Schindler read us that chapter, I was staring at a bowl of soup for 3 hours and refusing to eat it, and Dad said that if I didn't, he would pour it over my head. Obviously, he didn't, and that's an insane thing to say, but, desperation when your kid doesn't eat probably makes you say crazy things. But the next day, Fudge's dad poured the bowl of cornflakes over Fudge's head, and I realized that that was a distinct possibility, so I behaved myself for a while and ate what was put in front of me. Fudge had a very huge impact on my life. But yeah, I read the rest of the Fudge books and I loved them. I never really got into anything else Judy Blume wrote except for starring Sally J. Friedman as herself. I read that later. But, other than that, it was just Fudge for me. I did not really like Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret very much. She was just, I don't know, too girly for me. But yeah, my other favorite author during that time period with Miss Schindler was Lemony Snicket. I started listening to those books on audio when she let us pick from the cauldron. That was literally a cauldron with prizes. And we would get to pick them if we were good. And she had some great prizes, including some audiobooks. And I fell in love with the Lemony Snicket series of unfortunate events to the point that, well, I was at the bookstore on release day for every book, from book 9 to book 13. That's when I started, when book 9 was about to come out. I loved those books so much. Like, my anticipation was to the Harry Potter level, because there were just, you needed to know, like, there was all these secrets in them, and you needed to know what the answers to the questions were, and honestly, you never really quite found out too much information by the end of the series. In my personal opinion, I was kind of disappointed in the last book. I have watched part of the Netflix adaptation, but I also never finished it because I just want there to be some Lemony Snicket that I don't know about, like that there's more out there. I like the idea of never finishing it because I always want to think that there's some stuff I haven't discovered yet. But anyway, one of the books that Miss Schindler did not have on audio was the 4th book, The Miserable Mill. So she brailled it for me. And back then, Braille books were not as readily available. They produce way more now, especially now that there's digital Braille. But back then, a lot of the most popular stuff was brailled. So Miss Schindler would literally braille the books herself if we really wanted a book. And that was a process, of which I never quite found out what the process was, but suffice to say that brailing a book could take a few weeks. So she would be really excited to give me a book that she worked really hard on for a month, and I would consume it within 3 hours and be like, all right, what do you got for me next? I'm done. And it would kind of, I mean, I can't speak for her, but I assume it was part frustration and part being impressed because I was a fast reader. Like, you couldn't be completely mad at me, but it was also frustrating because she couldn't keep up. So she decided to make me read 2 chapters a week to slow the process down a bit. And while I understand why, it was so hard. I mean, can you imagine, like, pick your favorite book and imagine being forced to read 2 chapters a week? I mean, can you imagine doing that with a Harry Potter book, for example? Like, if you got the latest Harry Potter book 2 chapters a week, you'd probably riot. Thankfully, I wasn't quite that invested in the Miserable Mill to the point that I was like going insane over it, but it was still hard. But at the same time, it was kind of nice because I got to savor it too, reading little bits at a time. So, yeah. Anyway, there's that. I never had to read another book like that again. But yeah, I left Miss Schindler, and I went on to sort of pick my own books more. I read the Anne of Green Gables series. During middle school, fell in love with Lois Lowry, all the Anastasia Krupnik books. And her brother Sam had his own spin-off of books, so I loved him. And Number the Stars was another Lois Lowry book. Probably what sparked my love of World War II historical fiction. Although I think that was more Anne Frank. That also became a thing when I was in middle school. We read the play in 8th grade, and I needed to read her diary immediately. So I read the original edition, and then Brown Institute got the definitive edition, and I read that, and I read every Anne Frank biography I could get my hands on, and ever since then, I've been into World War II historical fiction. To this day, I have not quite gotten sick of it, even though I probably should be, because there is so much out there. But that just makes me want to read it more. And from, all these different angles. I mean, you have, the fact that Hitler hated Jews, but he also hated, disabled people like me. I recently read a book about a little girl who was deaf, and they had to save her because Hitler was trying to, round up the disabled children. So, it's kind of an interesting avenue to go down. But that kind of encompasses my reading as an adult, thanks to some of the reading I did as a kid. But yeah, I also did a bit of inappropriate reading as a kid. Once digital Braille started becoming a thing, it sort of became easy to download things you weren't supposed to be downloading. Because you could download them straight onto your Braille note, or it's like a Braille computer, but there's no screen for your sighted parent to supervise you. So I could be downloading literally anything and reading it. So I read the Flowers in the Attic series in high school, along with probably at least a few other of V.C. Andrews' series, way before I should have been reading it. Me and Mom recently saw the Lifetime adaptations for the series, for the Flowers in the Attic series, and she's like, I let you read this? What's wrong with me? And I'm like, no, you didn't let me read this. I never asked your permission to read this. I was downloading it because you didn't know about it and because I could. It was bad. And I'm actually not sure if there is a kid restriction to it now. I'm pretty sure that any kid can go on that website as long as they're a member of Bookshare and just download whatever they want. Although maybe you can't if you have like a kid, like a student membership. I'm not sure. Maybe someone else can tell me if anyone from Bookshare watches this video. But yeah, I definitely took advantage of the fact that I couldn't be supervised in my downloading of books. But yeah, that's my bookish history in a nutshell. Now I am into, like I said, a lot of historical fiction books. So most of my authors definitely encompass that genre. I love Susan Meisner, Kelly Rimmer, Kate Quinn. I loved the Alice Network. And I still have like 2 other books that I want to read. The Diamond Eye, and I can't remember what the other one's called. And then I'm also into like time travel, but that kind of also encompasses historical fiction as well, because like that's kind of the fun of time travel, that this modern person is going back into historic times. So I love the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon. And I loved Kindred by Octavia Butler. I want to see the Hulu adaptation for Kindred, but from what I understand, it's really different from the book. It sounds like Dana is a 21st century person with an iPhone in the series, the Hulu series. And I did see all of the Outlander series on TV too. I am currently waiting for the next season to come out this summer, as well as Diana Gabaldon's book 10. But I think I'll be waiting a lot longer for book 10, because it takes her years to come up with, to basically write her books, and book 10 is the last of her big books. So that'll be a long time before we get that book. She's actually been writing that series since the year I was born. The first one was published in 1991. That's wild to me. I read all of those during the pandemic. And yeah, those books are huge. Probably longer than Harry Potter. I'm pretty sure that one of them was like 52 hours on audio. Those things are long. But yeah, anyway. I also read some contemporary. I like Jodi Picoult, and can't think of any other authors off the top of my head. But I like contemporary books, what they call women's fiction. I like family stories, I guess. I like found family. I love adoption stories too. Give me an orphan, I'm in. Always. I mean, unless... The only way that I'm not into an orphan story is if that kid is not going to stay with that found family. If you're going to take this kid out of the family I fell in love with's home, I don't want to read it. So I always kind of skip to the back of the book just to make sure that my heart will not be broken. I learned my lesson with the great Gilly Hopkins. I will never make that mistake again. I fell in love with this family, and right, I will stop talking. Spoilers. But yeah, I just love orphan stories. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of my reading. You'll probably get more of an idea of what I like to read as I kind of go through what I read each month as I make more videos. But yeah, other than reading, like I said, I watch TV. You know, I have Netflix, Hulu, stuff like that, and regular TV, and I have shows, Gilmore Girls. But generally speaking, I like to watch book-to-screen adaptations. I like watching the adaptation of the book I read. I always read the book first. I don't always think that the book is better than the movie. 95% of the time I do, but there are some exceptions. But yeah, and I am also into swimming, because that is the only physical thing I like to do. I kind of boycotted physical therapy repeatedly. Just refused to do the exercises. I was a holy terror. Hated every minute of it. but you kind of do have to exercise and keep your bones as strong as possible when you have osteoporosis. So my doctor suggested I start water fitness classes. So I've been doing that the past few months, and I love them. And I go swimming after. So shout out to the YMCA. I really love it there. And I like the teachers that teach the classes. I was actually not expecting to get as much help with the classes as I got. But they're really like accommodating as far as like showing me how to do different things. So it's been great. So yeah, I probably won't be spending all my time with the book in front of me the way I used to. Now it'll be 50-50. Half of the time with the book, half of the time in the water. Hard to compete with the two, my two most favorite activities. But anyway, that's it for me. My next video will probably be my top books of 2022. And I will talk to you guys next time. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Happy World Braille Day. Bye.
Stop recording video.